Bruchim Abayim B'Shem Hashem. Parsha we read yesterday was still Shayach till Tuesday, to the past Shabbos. V'rei anochi nosim l'fneichem v'sabocha v'saklova. The switch from the singular to the plural. Re'ei l'fneichem. The Ibn Ezra and Rabbeinu Bachai both say that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the tzibur and he spoke to every individual. The Pashtus, most understand that to mean that it was sequential. He spoke first to the tzibur and then to each individual. I would submit, Libi Yomeinu, that it means bebas achas. It means simultaneously. When someone speaks to a tzibur, he has to see that a tzibur is made up of individuals. And each individual doesn't lose his identity, though he has a moment of transcendence in connecting to a tzibur. And when you speak to a yochid, you have to see that he represents a tzibur. Famous Maisa that Rav Shlomo Hyman, the first Rosh Yeshiva, Tervidas in America, gave a shiur and came in a snowstorm, walked over the ice, endangered himself, and gave a shiur to 5 bachim as if he was talking to a huge tzibur. And he was questioned afterwards, how you talking? He said, you see 5 bachim. I see the deiros, the generations that are coming out of them. I see a tzibur from this yochid. And whenever you're talking to a tzibur, you have to also recognize that it's made up of yechidim that remain yechidim, and each has his maslul, his path, his identity. Yaakov gives different brachas to each one of the shvatim. The shvatim all had their own paths in the Yam Suf. For me personally, I think of the posuk Yisrach Yisol ba'oisov. There are those that have a minig that they go to the Beis HaKvoros to invite parents, grandparents when they're making a simcha, because Yismach Hashem ba'oisov, those who were made it possible to be at the moment under the chuppah. The Ponovich Erov spoke in the Beis Knesset HaGodol, 1946, 2 years before Koma Medina. He was describing what he's going to build. And over here will be sitting Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir. Over here, Abaye and Rova. Over there, the Rambam and the Ramban. Ponovich Erov's koyach of oratory People got up to look to see if they could catch a glimpse. I see Reb Mendel sitting here. Tzatzal. Reb Dave. Reb Bullman. Reb Moshe Shapiro. "49 years of Nisim that were always the extraordinary paradox of great Talmidei Chachomim reaching, connecting to beginners. Because they saw the Talmidei Chachomim that would come from those beginners. And they saw those who would help develop those kinds of Talmidei Chachomim. The world is made up clearly of Yisachar and Zvulun. Everybody has his maslul and contribution. But the metzias, the actuality, is that it has to be focused on creating more limud Torah, more energy of Torah, to counteract a world that has moved very far away. There was one of the Rosh Yeshiva, the Nolan Gol, I believe his name was Rabbi Avram Ganachovsky at Chibin. Story was reported, there were witnesses, when the Gan HaChayot, the zoo used to be in Tel Alza, some child, toddler, got disconnected from his parents, was wandering, crying. Rabbi Avram was an old Godel Ma'od. He took the little boy and put him on his shoulders and walked into the Gan HaChayot. He said, only that way the parents will be able to see him. The parents will be able to take note of him. And he walked around the Gan HaChayot with the little boy on his shoulders. The Marshal asks, Mishnah in the Rosh Hashanah, Mishnah has it that Moshe was Oilel, he went up to the Rosh HaGevurah, he ascended to the top of the hill. When he lifted his hands, Aaron and Hur held his arms, it was tefillah. Klal Yisrael was able to win, Yoshua was able to score in the battlefield. Asked the Marshal, if it's tefillah, the halacha is memamakim, you go down. Till very recently, that was the minig to have a depression in the floor in front of the Omud where the Chazan stood. You can still find that in Baltimore, in the Aguda I know, and there's one shul in Lakewood that I know also. I'm sure there are others. But it's not common today. So the Marshal asks, my high, what do you mean, Oila Oiro Shagiva? Why did he go up? He should have been davening from a lower space. Says the Marshal that there are times you can afford the luxury of going down. And there are times you have to be high profile to lift up the spirits of Klal Yisrael, to buoy them up, because they've been put down. Many of you I've told that when the idea of this Beis Medrash was first presented, I would have opted for taking half the money for the running budget. Chazal talk about somebody walking in Alexandria. How many Talmidei Chachamim went hungry because of this structure? But our Yedidim, Mekalvim out in the field in the world, say that it's a new door. And this door has to be lifted up. It needs a higher profile. Somebody walks in, before he can gather together the mindset to think, to listen to what's being said, the environment creates an ambience, a certain feeling. It projects. This is the beginner coming from a university campus, lahavdil. Are these guys winners or losers? Is this comparable? Should I invest time and effort to start thinking, not just regurgitating what has been said for an exam? When you carry around a little kli, a little utensil of potential tumor in your pocket, it's very hard to get people's attention. The world changes. When I look at the scan, the headlines, the news, it's not that those who've lost their way can be taken back to the zoo. The cages of the zoo have been opened up, and the zoo are roaming the streets. And that's our challenge. On the Rei Anochi, the Balaturim says, see the Anochi of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. What was going on there? They were Reim as a Kailas. They saw the sounds. There was an S. Like the Ramban says in Parshas V'eschanon, Pen Tishka, you have to revisit the moment at Sinai. When we're learning Torah, we're learning the Dvar Hashem that transcends and transforms He makes a new Metzias of us. Every Hadron is a siyum, and it's beginning a new Masechta. Rabbi Simcha says on Mei Mariva that had Moshe Aaron spoken to the seller, would have been a reconnection to the Nes of Roya Mesakayla, seeing the sounds. And they forfeited that by hitting the seller, when Moshe hit the seller. What do I need? The Reimas HaKolos through the Deiros. Amongst the many differences between Riyah and Shmiya, in Shmiya you have to be close to hear. Riyah you can see from a distance. Shmiya is also sequential. Shtei kolos v'bas achat lo nishmoim. Riyah you can see panoramically. There are two ways to relate to the kiyum of the Puronius, the Klola, in the history of Klal Yisrael. Shmiyadik or Riyadik? Shmiyadik, you take each individual event, Churban Bayis Rishon, Churban Bayis Sheni, Gerish Svod, Chumenekli, the Shoah. You take each individual event separately, built in his bound. How do you handle such a thing? But if you begin with a bris bein absorim, riyadik, panoramically, you begin with a bris bein absorim, that was the lesser of the evils, of the choices, when Klal Yisrael fails. And each event then is moving towards a climax. It's coming from someplace and going someplace. It's a process. It's a talich. Climax with Bias HaGoel v'Meheru Yomeinu. Till then, a lot of steers, a lot of paradoxes, built into the nature of man. Now's not the time to expand on that. But this Beis Medrash, the digging down 8.5 meters to create this space, seemed highly unlikely that we would wind up with the light, the air, the beauty, the majesty of this place. I would have bet against it. But that's what happened. Shomei Psoim Hashem. Others, more professional, were involved in making the decisions about the architect, the builder. And here we are. But in Yiddish, they say that the cholent is gerotten in Gast. The cholent tastes as good as the guests who have been invited to partake. Keep in mind, fellas, that there was a lot of digging down, a lot of improbability against us coming together for this moment. It's an opportunity that the Rebbeinu Shalom has given us to project more. We were Oile L'Rosh HaGiva, and we need a lot of tefillas and a lot of devoted learning here to be able to project this miracle further and share it with all of Klal Yisrael. Don't for a moment forget that the cages of the zoo have been thrown open and we're living in a world that the animals are roaming free. Each one of us has a certain animalistic impetus. The child till bar mitzvah is only Yetzer Hara. But the only way we can transcend and transform is through going back to the plan of the supreme architect who designed this world and us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vehi noyam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu u'maisi yadeinu kon aleinu. We start with the subjective. We start with me. That's the way I meet the world. But u'maisi yadeinu konenehu. We're davening, we're learning b'chavrusa, we're interacting with Rabbeim that will help us objectify the subjective. Shem Yiten, that we should hear, see a Kol Torah. I'll end with this. I don't think it's accidental. Some of us have shared this idea that Rabbi Yoni Peretz worked day and night to organize the Sforim. Torah Shebal Peh. Frequently, beginners ask, why do you call it an oral law? It's printed, it's published, it's on the shelf. Try learning it without a Rebbe. And even with all the aids, the wonderful, magnificent aids of the Schattenstein Shas and the Mesifta and the Lublin, wonderful to use as reference. But remember our answer. When somebody has gone through a JLE, a Mechina, and he pops up in the office and he says, okay, Rabbi, I'm pretty persuaded that this stuff is true. Level with me. How long am I in for? I said, I don't know. That's highly individual. But one thing I do know. The ideal day to leave Ohr Somayach is if on that day that you left, you were crossing the ocean in a ship and you got hit by lightning and you wound up marooned on a desert island with a Gemara Vilna Shas, and you wouldn't be bored, that's the day to leave. Because then you are in a position to be excited, to have the aesthetic thrill of Limud Torah, and you'll be a contributing member to any community that you will join. With the tumah that's chogeget in the world today. We have suggested, and we are convinced, that the Torah Sheba'al Peh had to be that exact paradox. It's published, it's written, it's printed, but it remains the Torah Sheba'al Peh. But you had to be able to see it, to be metaher, the einayim, when the cages of the zoo have been thrown open and you carry a potential tumor in your pocket. The Ben Hashem should give us the schus that the Kol Torah should be seen, should be heard, and echo for many days to come. Remember, in the chutzlah, we don't make a bracha in a Beis Medrash, but theoretically a mezuzah, you have 30 days if you buy an apartment, rent an apartment in chutzlah. Here you have to put up the mezuzah right away. Because 30 days, chutzlah, who knows? Maybe tomorrow I have to move. It's golus. You're in motion. Here you're home. When you're home, you put up the mezuzah right away. Bruchim aboim b'shem Hashem, Shem Yitein, that from these Daled Amas and these walls should come out a Kol Torah and make that transformation that we need, Am Yisrael needs, the world needs. Bruchim aboim.